Most people think visibility is power. They think if they're always posting, always responding, always showing up, they'll eventually become important. But the truth is, constant visibility is one of the biggest lies of modern life. Just because people can see you doesn't mean you're valuable. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're progressing. And just because you're accessible doesn't mean you're significant. In fact, the more available you are, the less valuable you become. We live in a world that rewards noise, not depth. Everyone is talking, reacting, scrolling, commenting, explaining, defending, and while you're busy being visible, life is quietly passing you by. Your focus is being fragmented, your energy is being drained, your potential is being diluted, you're everywhere, but you're not going anywhere. Visibility without purpose creates pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to impress, pressure to keep up an image instead of building a life. When you're constantly online, you're living on the timeline of other people's expectations. You wake up reacting instead of creating. You consume before you think. You respond before you reflect. And over time, you forget what you actually want because you're too busy managing how you appear. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't need more exposure. They need more isolation. They don't need more opinions. They need more clarity. They don't need more attention. They need more alignment. Constant visibility keeps you shallow because depth requires silence, growth requires stillness, transformation requires space. Think about it. Every meaningful upgrade in life requires focus, and focus cannot exist in chaos. You cannot hear your own thoughts when the world is constantly shouting at you. You cannot design your future when you're addicted to feedback. You cannot build discipline when your phone decides how you feel every 5 minutes. The lie of constant visibility convinces you that disappearing means falling behind, but the opposite is true. The people who are winning long-term are not the loudest ones. They are the quiet builders, the strategic thinkers, the disciplined individuals who know when to step back so they can leap forward. When you're always visible, you're always interruptible. And an interruptible life is an unproductive life. Every notification trains your brain to lose focus. Every unnecessary conversation steals momentum. Every comparison weakens confidence. You start measuring your worth by likes, views, and reactions instead of results and growth. Disappearing doesn't mean you're afraid. It means you're serious. It means you've realized that attention is expensive and focus is priceless. It means you understand that the version of you who will change your life cannot be built in public. That version requires private discipline, private failure, private learning, and private consistency. Most people announce their goals because they crave validation. They want applause before effort, but applause is a terrible substitute for progress. Silence forces you to rely on execution instead of encouragement. And when you remove the audience, you discover who you really are. Constant visibility also keeps you emotionally reactive. You're happy when you're praised. You're discouraged when you're ignored. You're angry when you're misunderstood. Your emotions are no longer self-governed. They're crowd-controlled. And a life controlled by external reactions will never produce internal peace. The truth is, you don't need to be seen right now. You need to be strengthened. You don't need to be heard. You need to be prepared. You don't need to explain yourself. You need to improve yourself. There will be a time to be visible, but visibility without value is just noise. When you finally step away from constant visibility, something powerful happens. Your mind slows down. Your priorities sharpen. Your discipline increases. You stop living for reactions and start living with intention. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, am I becoming who I need to be? Disappearing is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the decision to stop renting your attention to the world and start investing it in your future. And once you understand that, you'll realize that the fastest way to change your life is not to be everywhere. It's to go deep, go quiet, and go to work when nobody is watching. Most people think disappearing means giving up. They think stepping back is the same as falling behind. But disappearing is not quitting, it's repositioning. Quitting is when you abandon your vision. Repositioning is when you protect it. One comes from fear, the other comes from wisdom. When you reposition, you're not running from life. You're stepping out of the noise so you can finally hear the signal. You're not hiding because you're weak. You're withdrawing because you're intentional. Every powerful move in life requires a shift in position, and you cannot shift while you're surrounded by constant distractions and opinions. Quitting says, I can't do this. Repositioning says, I'm preparing to do this at a higher level. That's a completely different mindset. One is driven by exhaustion, the other by strategy. One ends the journey, the other redesigns it. Most people burn out not because they're doing too much, but because they're doing too much of the wrong things. They're busy maintaining appearances instead of building assets. They're exhausted from reacting instead of creating. Repositioning allows you to pause the performance so you can rebuild the foundation. When you step back, you gain perspective, and perspective is power. You start to see patterns you couldn't see before. You recognize habits that were holding you hostage. You identify relationships that were draining you instead of developing you. None of that clarity is possible when you're constantly in motion. Repositioning also restores your authority over your own time. Instead of your schedule being dictated by notifications, expectations, and obligations, you begin to choose deliberately how your energy is spent. And when you control your time, you control your life. People who quit want relief. People who reposition want results. Relief is temporary. Results are permanent. That's why repositioning feels uncomfortable at first. It demands patience. It demands discipline. It demands the humility to go quiet while others keep talking. Here's the hard truth. Sometimes you have to disappoint people to stop disappointing yourself. Repositioning means saying no without explaining. It means being misunderstood without defending. It means letting go of immediate approval to gain long-term alignment. You're not behind. You're just early in a season that requires preparation instead of presentation. Seeds don't grow on the surface. They grow in the dark. And if you dig them up every week to check progress, you'll kill what you planted. Repositioning is choosing to invest in skills instead of status, in character instead of clout, in systems instead of shortcuts. It's deciding that your future matters more than your current comfort. The world celebrates speed, but life rewards direction. Moving fast in the wrong direction is still failure. Stepping back to adjust your direction is intelligence. That pause might look like stagnation to others, but it's alignment to you. When you disappear with intention, you're not losing momentum. You're conserving it. You're storing energy. You're building leverage. And when you reemerge, you won't need to explain what you were doing. Your results will speak louder than your absence ever could. Repositioning is the bridge between where you are and who you're becoming. It's the space where confusion turns into clarity and effort turns into effectiveness. And once you understand that, you stop fearing disappearance and start respecting it as one of the most powerful moves you can make. Most people are afraid of being alone, not because they dislike solitude, but because silence exposes truth. Noise distracts you from who you really are. Solitude forces you to face it. And that's why isolation, when used correctly, doesn't weaken you. It elevates you. Isolation is not loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from others. Isolation is the discipline of being connected to yourself. One drains you, the other develops you. And the people who rise to the top understand the difference. Every level of growth requires separation. You cannot think like the future version of yourself while constantly surrounded by people who are comfortable with your past. Their conversations anchor you. Their habits normalize mediocrity. Their expectations keep you small. Isolation breaks those invisible chains. In silence, your mind becomes sharper. Without constant input, your thoughts finally have space to organize themselves. You start thinking in principles instead of opinions, in strategies instead of reactions, in purpose instead of pressure. That clarity alone can change the direction of your life. Isolation also exposes discipline. When no one is watching, excuses have nowhere to hide. There's no applause to motivate you, no criticism to blame, just you and your commitment. And that's where real strength is built. Not when you feel inspired, but when you act without being seen. The world teaches you to seek motivation, but isolation teaches you to build systems. Motivation is emotional. Systems are structural. Motivation comes and goes. Systems stay. And the quiet environment of isolation is where systems are created and refined. Think about this. Every breakthrough requires deep work, and deep work requires uninterrupted time. You cannot master a skill, build a vision, or redesign your life in 5-minute fragments between notifications. Isolation protects the focus that excellence demands. In isolation, you stop performing and start becoming. There's no audience to impress, so your actions become honest. You're no longer pretending to be disciplined. You're either doing the work or you're not. That honesty accelerates growth. Isolation also strengthens emotional control. When you're removed from constant comparison, your confidence stabilizes. You stop measuring your progress against someone else's highlight reel. You start measuring it against your own potential. That shift alone restores peace and self-belief. Many people fear isolation because it feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. It's a signal that growth is happening. Muscles grow under resistance. Character grows under pressure. Vision grows in silence. Isolation gives you the gift of self-trust. When you spend time alone executing your plans, keeping promises to yourself, and seeing small wins compound, confidence stops being something you chase. It becomes something you embody. This is why the most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest one. It's the quiet one who's been alone long enough to know exactly who they are and what they're capable of. That person doesn't need validation. They already have conviction. Isolation is not about cutting people off forever. It's about cutting distractions off temporarily. It's about stepping away long enough to build the version of yourself that can handle the next level of life. If you want elevation, you must respect isolation, because when you learn to be alone without being lost, you gain a power that no crowd can ever give you. Most people think their life is shaped by big decisions, but in reality, it's shaped by their environment. What you see, hear, and engage with every day is programming you, whether you realize it or not. Your environment is not neutral. It's either pushing you forward or pulling you backward. Every conversation you allow, every piece of content you consume, every place you spend time in is feeding your mind instructions. And the dangerous part is that most of this programming happens unconsciously. You don't wake up and decide to lower your standards. You absorb them. You don't choose to think small. You adapt to what's normal around you. If you're surrounded by people who complain, you'll eventually complain. If you're surrounded by people who procrastinate, delay will start to feel acceptable. If you're surrounded by constant entertainment, boredom will feel unbearable. Your environment trains your behavior before your willpower ever gets a chance. Social media is one of the most powerful programming tools ever created. It shapes your attention span, your desires, and your self-image. It teaches you to crave quick rewards instead of long-term results. It rewards outrage over insight and popularity over progress. And if you don't control it, it will quietly control you. Your physical environment matters too. Cluttered spaces create cluttered thinking. Noisy environments produce scattered focus. Comfort without challenge breeds stagnation. You cannot expect discipline from an environment designed for distraction. The reason change feels hard is not because you lack motivation, but because your environment is working against you. You're trying to build a new future while standing in a space that constantly reminds you of your old habits. That's like trying to stay dry in the rain without an umbrella. Your environment also includes the stories you repeatedly tell yourself. Internal dialogue is part of your mental ecosystem. If you constantly rehearse limitation, fear, or excuses, your mind will accept them as truth. What you tolerate internally becomes your external reality. To change your life, you must audit your environment with honesty. Ask yourself, does this place, this routine, this relationship pull me toward who I want to become or trap me in who I used to be? If it drains you, distracts you, or diminishes your standards, it's costing you more than you think. High-level people design their environments on purpose. They remove friction from good habits and add friction to bad ones. They make discipline easier and distraction harder. They don't rely on willpower, they rely on structure. When you take control of your environment, you stop fighting yourself. Growth becomes natural instead of forced. Focus becomes normal instead of rare. Progress becomes predictable instead of accidental. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment. And once you understand that, you stop blaming yourself and start redesigning the spaces, inputs, and influences that are shaping your life every single day. Most people try to change their lives without changing their location, their habits, or their thinking, and then they wonder why nothing changes. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. You cannot transform in the same place you were formed. The environment that created your current version is perfectly designed to keep you exactly where you are. Every place carries memory. Every routine carries momentum. Every relationship carries expectation. When you stay in the same space, your brain automatically returns to old patterns, not because you're weak, but because familiarity feels safe. And safety, when overused, becomes a prison. People expect you to be who you've always been. They speak to the old version of you. They remind you of past mistakes. They joke about your limits. Even when they mean no harm, those subtle cues pull you back into an identity you're trying to outgrow. Transformation requires disruption. It requires stepping into an unfamiliar space where old habits no longer fit, where your excuses feel uncomfortable, where your previous identity doesn't get automatic validation. New environments demand new behavior. This doesn't always mean moving to a new city. Sometimes it means changing your daily rhythm. Sometimes it means distancing yourself from certain conversations. Sometimes it means redesigning your schedule so there's no room for the habits that were quietly ruining you. Growth is difficult because your old environment negotiates with you. It reminds you how things used to be. It offers comfort when discipline is required. It invites you back into routines that feel normal but produce no progress. When you change environments, you change expectations. You stop being the person people are used to and start being the person you're becoming. That shift is powerful. It gives you permission to act differently without constantly explaining yourself. There's a reason breakthroughs often happen when people travel, start fresh routines, or enter new seasons of life. Distance creates objectivity, space creates clarity, and clarity creates momentum. Staying in the same place while trying to change is like trying to write a new story on a page that's already full. You need a clean margin, a new chapter, a different context. Transformation is not about becoming someone else. It's about removing the conditions that keep triggering your old self. When those triggers are gone, discipline becomes easier, focus becomes natural, confidence becomes stable. You don't owe anyone access to the version of you that's under construction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your future is to step away from the environment that shaped your past. Change your place and your patterns will follow, because when the environment shifts, identity has room to evolve. Most people only respect results they can see, but the most important work in your life happens when no one is watching. The invisible season is the phase where effort goes unnoticed, progress is silent, and discipline feels unrewarded. And that's exactly why it creates the most powerful version of you. When there's no audience, there's no pressure to perform, no image to maintain, no applause to chase. You're forced to confront the truth. Will you still show up when nobody claps? That question separates potential from greatness. Invisibility removes shortcuts. You can't rely on motivation, hype, or external validation. You have to rely on systems, habits, and self-respect. And when discipline becomes internal instead of external, it becomes unbreakable. The invisible season is where identity is forged. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" Your actions become consistent because they're aligned with values, not visibility. This is also where patience is built. When progress is slow and silent, you learn to trust the process instead of the timeline. You stop rushing results. You start stacking days. And consistency compounds quietly until one day it becomes undeniable. Invisibility protects you from comparison. No one knows what you're building, so no one's success can distract you. Your focus narrows. Your standards rise. Your energy stops leaking into unnecessary conversations and explanations. The invisible season also reveals your true relationship with work. When no one is praising you, excuses sound louder, fatigue feels heavier, and yet every time you push through, your confidence deepens. Not the loud confidence that needs approval, but the quiet confidence that comes from self-trust. People who skip this season often collapse under visibility. They look successful but lack foundation. Pressure exposes what preparation failed to build. But those who respect invisibility rise with stability. They don't crumble when seen because they were built when unseen. Nature understands this principle. Roots grow in darkness before trees grow in the open. Strength is developed underground long before it's displayed above ground. Life never rushes the foundation. The invisible season trains you to value progress over praise. And once you master that, criticism loses its power. Approval loses its hold. You become centered, not reactive. When you finally emerge, it won't feel like luck. It will feel inevitable, because while others were performing, you were preparing. While others were explaining, you were executing. Greatness is quiet at first, and the ones who understand that don't fear invisibility. They use it. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do hard things, but real discipline is about designing a life where hard things become easier. And one of the fastest ways to do that is by limiting access. Access to your time, your energy, and your attention. When everyone can reach you, discipline has to fight too many battles. Every message is a decision. Every call is a distraction. Every interruption is a temptation to delay what actually matters. An open-door life produces a weak routine. When you remove access, discipline stops competing. You're no longer constantly choosing between focus and distraction because distraction isn't available. And when temptation is removed, consistency becomes natural. This is why disappearing increases productivity, not because you suddenly become more motivated, but because fewer people have the power to pull you out of alignment. Silence protects momentum. Access creates obligation. Obligation creates pressure. Pressure creates fatigue, and fatigue kills discipline. But when you control access, your energy stabilizes. You're no longer reacting all day. You're executing with intention. Most people are tired not because they're working hard, but because they're being interrupted constantly. Mental switching is exhausting. Every time your focus breaks, your brain has to restart. Limiting access preserves mental strength. When no one can reach you easily, your priorities become clear. You know what you're supposed to be working on, and nothing is fighting for your attention. That clarity builds rhythm, and rhythm builds discipline. Disappearing also reveals how much of your time was being spent on things that didn't move your life forward. Conversations that went nowhere. Requests that didn't align. Emergencies that weren't actually emergencies. When access is limited, respect increases, not because you demand it, but because scarcity creates value. People value what they can't constantly interrupt. More importantly, you start respecting yourself. You stop betraying your plans for convenience. You stop breaking promises to yourself just to be available to others. Discipline thrives in structure, not chaos. And controlling access is one of the most powerful structures you can build. It creates a protected space where growth is uninterrupted. When you disappear strategically, discipline stops feeling like struggle and starts feeling like identity. You don't force consistency, you live it. Most people talk too much about what they're going to do, and that's exactly why they never do it. Announcing goals feels productive, but it's a psychological trap. The moment you talk about what you plan to become, your brain rewards you as if you've already done the work, and that false sense of progress kills execution. Talking creates comfort, execution creates change, and comfort is the enemy of transformation. When you announce your plans, you invite opinions. Some people doubt you, some people praise you. Both are distractions. Doubt drains your energy, praise relaxes your urgency. Either way, your focus shifts away from the work and toward the reaction. Silence removes pressure. No one is watching, no one is expecting updates, no one is counting your steps. That freedom allows you to move at your own pace, make mistakes, and adjust without embarrassment. Execution thrives in privacy. You can fail quietly, learn quickly, improve consistently. There's no need to defend your progress or explain delays. You're accountable only to your standards, not public timelines. Most people announce because they want motivation, but motivation borrowed from others is unstable. It disappears the moment attention fades. Execution builds self-generated motivation. The more you act, the more confident you become. Confidence follows action, not conversation. Talking also creates identity pressure. Once you say, "I'm going to do this," you feel forced to maintain that image, even if your strategy needs adjustment. Silence gives you flexibility. It allows evolution without explanation. The strongest people move in silence because they understand leverage. Results are leverage, words are not. When results arrive, explanations are unnecessary. Silence also protects your vision. Not everyone needs to know your plans. Some people will project their limitations onto your future. Others will try to benefit from work they didn't help build. Privacy keeps your vision clean. Execution compounds when uninterrupted. Small actions repeated daily outperform big announcements made once, and those small actions require focus, not feedback. When you stop announcing and start executing, something powerful happens. You build credibility with yourself. You trust your word again. And self-trust is the foundation of every major achievement. Let your silence be so loud that when results finally appear, no one asks what happened. They just see that something changed. Most people feel the need to explain themselves because they're still seeking approval. They want to be understood, validated, and accepted. But the higher you go in life, the less explaining you do. At a certain level, explanations become unnecessary because results communicate everything. When you return with explanations, you're asking for permission to be different. When you return with results, you're establishing authority. One invites debate, the other ends it. Explanations are fragile. They depend on other people's agreement. Results are solid. They stand on their own. You don't need to convince anyone when the evidence is visible. People who demand explanations often weren't invested in your journey. They didn't support the process, but they want access to the outcome. You don't owe them a detailed story. Your growth doesn't require a committee's approval. Returning with results also protects your peace. You're no longer emotionally involved in how people interpret your decisions. You don't defend your choices because your progress defends them for you. Results shift dynamics. The same people who questioned your absence now respect your discipline. The same voices that doubted your direction now observe your progress. Not because you explained better, but because you executed better. Explanations keep you in the past. Results move you into the present. When you explain, you relive old decisions. When you show results, you step into a new identity. Silence during the process builds strength. Silence after success builds respect. The less you say, the more weight your presence carries. People misunderstand silence as arrogance. But silence is often clarity. It's knowing that your path doesn't need constant justification. When you return with results, you don't announce them loudly. You let them speak naturally. You don't posture. You don't brag. You simply exist differently. That difference is undeniable. It's felt in your confidence, your discipline, your standards, and your boundaries. Results change conversations. They remove the need to explain why you disappeared, because the answer is obvious. The world is noisy. Everyone is chasing attention, likes, and followers, thinking that visibility equals success. But 2026 will belong to a different kind of person, the one who masters focus instead of following the crowd, the person who understands that influence is built on value, not visibility, the one who disappears with intention, builds quietly, and returns with undeniable results. The people who dominate in the future will not be those who are everywhere. They will be the ones who know when to step back so they can leap forward. They will protect their time, their energy, and their attention like precious currency, investing it only where it compounds. Others waste their lives reacting to distractions, but this person acts with purpose, clarity, and strategy. Focus is the rarest commodity of all. When everyone else is overwhelmed by noise, notifications, and opinion, the person who can concentrate on what truly matters becomes unstoppable. Mastering focus is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters with consistency, discipline, and patience. It's about eliminating what doesn't move the needle and dedicating yourself to what transforms your life. This isn't a temporary strategy, it's a lifestyle. In 2026, the most successful people will be the ones who disappear long enough to build depth, then re-emerge to create impact. They don't need applause along the way. They don't chase validation. They let results speak for them. And by the time the world notices, they are already far ahead, operating on a level no one else can reach. The future rewards preparation, patience, and self-mastery. Those who wait for permission will stay stuck. Those who follow trends will be left behind. But those who intentionally step back, sharpen their skills, and align their environment with their vision will rise. They will return not as the person who left, but as a new force, capable of achieving things most only dream about. Disappearance is not failure. Silence is not weakness. The invisible season is where greatness is formed. And when you finally step forward, you do so with authority, clarity, and momentum that cannot be ignored. So in 2026, stop chasing the crowd, stop seeking approval, stop trying to be everywhere at once. Step back, focus on what truly matters, build in the shadows, and re-enter the world transformed. The world will not have a choice but to acknowledge your power, because results cannot be denied. The choice is yours. Remain distracted and reactive, or disappear with intention, master focus, and create a life that others will only see as extraordinary.